Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to spend some time with me on the video today, because we're going to be talking about Alabama rigs, which is something you don't hear much about on this channel. We don't do much Alabama rig stuff on it because I was one of the guys that was really behind the movement to get them banned from tournaments, which fortunately we did, like from the Bassmaster tournaments. But they nevertheless, they're still super fun to fish and they catch big fish. I just don't think they have any place in tournaments. So in today's video, I'm going to give you all some tips and advice on what has worked for me. I've been fishing Alabama rigs since they came out. I was actually at the tournament that Paulie Elias won years ago with the Alabama rig that made it famous. So I've got a little story behind that I'm going to tell you today in the video. But anyway, I think you guys are going to get some good tips and advice. Also, guys, quick invitation. I'd just like to invite everybody to please hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. We've been losing a lot of subscribers here lately because I've been doing anti-live scope videos, and every time I do, a lot of people unsubscribe to the channel. But anyway, if you guys are interested in supporting the channel, a good way to do that is just hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button so you don't miss any videos. And also it helps if you share the videos, so much appreciated there. Okay, little story behind this. Paul Elias, basically stunned the bass fishing world there at Lake Guntersville years ago when he won that tournament on an Alabama rig, because he blew that tournament away. And at the time, nobody knew what an Alabama rig, nobody knew what it was. And I was at a sports show about 3 months before that, and the guy that developed the Alabama rig, he showed me the A-rig there. He was, what it was. And I looked at the thing. When you see an A-rig, it's like, yeah, right. Tell me a fish is going to hit this monstrosity. And so I was trying to be polite, and I didn't, say much about it, and I didn't think much about it. I thought it was just some gimmick. And then Paulie Elias winds up winning the tournament on the thing, and it became one of the most hottest baits of all time after that. So if I would have been so closed-minded and got on the bandwagon, I may have been one of the first people to use the A-rig. But anyway, guys, A-rig is a great lure during the cold water months to catch big fish on. I primarily fish it from December to late March. That's to me is the time frame, and it's one of the best late winter, pre-spawn, early spring baits that you're going to have to catch big ones. Okay, now there's a couple different pieces of advice on it. First of all, let's talk about the difference between the bladed A-rig with blades on it and the non-bladed. And also, guys, one tip I'll give you: when you get your A-rig, make sure that you spread them apart, pretty decently. You want to get some separation within the baits that are on there. And also, most of the time, your A-rig is going to run a certain direction. It's designed to run a certain way, usually with, like on here, like with the two longer wires on the bottom. Make sure that your two baits that are on your longer wires that stick out further are your largest baits. Usually what I like to do is I like to have 2 or 3 of my baits the same, and then I'll have a couple different ones, usually larger. So that's going to help out. But also just make sure to bend them out there. But the difference between the blade versus the non-blade, to me, is about the weather conditions that you encounter the day that you're out there. Now, if you have a day out there where it's not much wind and you have some high light intensity, and maybe the water's a little bit on the clean side, I definitely like the A-rig without the blade on there. I don't think that you need the flash during those lower light days. So if I get out there, like I said, it's sunny, or it's mostly sunny with a few clouds in the sky, and the wind's like less than 10 miles an hour, and my water visibility is, say, greater than 3 feet, I'm usually going with the non-bladed A-rig, which a lot of people don't use. A lot of people use nothing but the bladed A-rig, but guys, I can promise you, in the tough fishing conditions, that bladeless A-rig will get more bites. And then in conditions where I have, at least 50% overcast or overcast skies and a wind of like greater than 10 miles an hour, I use the blade on there, even in clear water. But the bladed A-rig is also my choice if the water is sort of marginally dirty for an A-rig. And I consider the water visibility of about 2 feet to be minimum for me to fish around an A-rig. And I'll tell you another thing: if the water visibility is around 2 feet on an A-rig, throw your A-rig around shallow targets like the same way you'd fish a spinnerbait. You see a lay down tree in the water, or a stump, or a dock, just toss that A-rig, and just reel it like a spinner bait just underneath the surface in that little bit off colored water. That's one tactic with an A-rig that a lot of people have never got onto, is fishing it, just like you would a crankbait or spinnerbait or chatterbait around targets. I mean, there's a lot of pros that have done that and do pretty well. Okay, the next thing with it is the baits that you put on it. I prefer small swim baits. Now, what happened is when the A-rig first came out, a lot of guys were putting 5 and 6 inch, the big swim baits on it. But as the bait evolved and as more people started throwing it, those larger baits became much less effective. So you're going to do a lot better on your A-rigs if you go to smaller swim baits. Like the 2.5 to 3 inch size is going to be perfect. There's a lot of different types of swim baits, and you can get a lot of 3 inch long swim baits that are fairly fat bodied, like that Kitech Fat Impact and the Megabass Spark Shad 3 inch. They got some pretty fat bodies on there. And also, another little tip I'll give you is use a 1/8 ounce jig head with your baits there. A lot of people go 1/4 ounce, but I have found that if I use an 1/8 ounce head on there, it seems like I can control the fall of the bait a little bit better. And the fall of the A-rig it just seems like I get more bites than if I use a real heavy one with that. The tackle that I throw it on is I throw them on my flipping stick all the time. Megabass Alkalies flipping stick. Usually I'm throwing it on 20 to 25 pound test, straight Seaguard Vizex line. Really like the flipping stick simply because you can handle the A-rig more. Since it's such a crazy large bait, you can handle it better. You can make a longer cast. You can take up more line on the hook set. Since A-rig, I don't manipulate action on my A-rig, with my wrist and anything. That's why I can get away with the flipping stick. And finally, the retrieve. Let me tell you one retrieve, guys. When you throw your A-rig out there, reel it in like that. Reel it for 2 or 3 cranks, then make a fast half turn like that. So you're reeling it 1, 2, 3, fast half turn. 1, 2, 3, fast half turn. What happens is it's going through the water like this, and all of a sudden it just speeds up just like that a little bit. A lot of times when you make that fast half turn with it and it speeds up a little bit, they'll come up and grab the thing. Areas that you want to fish on it are varied. Normally during the pre-spawn time of the year in the late winter, you're fishing the same type of areas that you're fishing like a jerkbait. So probably my favorite, places for an A-rig are points, main lake and secondary points, especially if they have some wind on it. I've done pretty good parallel and bluff banks with them. If there's any type of submergent or standing timber in a lake, fishing an A-rig next to that timber can be really pretty good. And also when that water temperature gets above 50 degrees, like say in March, you can just get on windy banks, windy channel banks, rocky banks, and do pretty good with that. Wind is a big friend of an A-rig. It's like most all the good days I've had on an A-rig, especially for big fish, they've been on windy days. It's like if I get a windy day and the water temperature is over 50 degrees and I'm fishing for fun or whatever, I usually got an A-rig on. So those channel banks that, the same type of banks you throw like a wiggle board on, that's a really good type of bank to throw an A-rig on if you got some wind pounding against it. But anyway, guys, it's a great lure for big ones, man. It's like they're a pain in the butt because every time that, if you lose one, it costs a bunch of money. And then, sometimes you get your jig head straightened out and you have to re-put them on there, or you break it off and you have to re-rig the whole thing. One other thing with that is use an open jig head. It's like, I know you're going to lose some fish, and you're going to lose some baits and straighten some baits out. But a lot of people have tried using like the weedless setups on an A-rig. I just have never done any good on it. It's usually the straight, open jig head, and that's why I like to go to a wire like this. I put the Megabass Okashira head on there, and this is it's a stiff hook, but you can bend it out on 25 pound test line, and then you can just bend it back or put another one on. But anyway, that's just a few tips with it that's worked for me. One other thing on baits there is, like I said, I don't like to use all the same size or all the same color of swim baits on my A-rigs. I'm usually mixing it up a little bit. Like I said, I usually have 3. On a 5 lure A-rig, I'll usually have 3 the same color and the same size, and I'll have 2 different ones of different color and different size. And also it helps if you put some, like take some spike at a dye pen and dye the tails on a couple of them just to set them apart. But try to avoid, having all the baits the same size, same color. You'll get more bites. trigger more bites with a couple on there that have a different size and different color. So anyway, guys, hope it helps out. We'll talk later.